All right, let's finish Shiloh, last chapter, chapter 15. I hope you've enjoyed this book as much as I have. It's my first time reading it too. I've never read this novel. So after we finish it, you're welcome to take an AR test on it. Remember, our AR goal is due the end of this week. And so it's a great opportunity to earn quite a few AR points on the book Shiloh. All right, chapter 15. It's a bit long, so sit back, get comfortable, and we'll finish the book. Remember, Judd Travers, as we begin, just let Marty agree to keep Shiloh as long as he works for him for 20 hours after school, or at 3 o'clock, I believe, each day. So let's read and find out what happens. Closer I get to home, though, the bigger the grin on my face. When I burst in the kitchen, I got a smile from ear to ear. Dad's having his coffee, and Ma's in the living room listening to the Sunday morning service by Brother Jonas. She watches him every Sunday at 7, which tells me what time it is already. Where you been? Says Dad. And I can tell Ma is paying attention too. You up and gone, we got to worrying. I slide my chair and almost have to push my cheeks in to keep the smile from going all the way around my head. Went to see Judd Travers, I say, still breathless, and I'm buying his dog. Ma gets up and comes to the kitchen doorway. What? Thought he wasn't selling, says Dad, looking at me hard. He wasn't, but I talked him into it. He needs help around his place, and he says if I work hard for him for 20 hours at $2 an hour, that'll pay the $40 he wants for Shiloh. Ma's smile gets broader by the minute. I don't believe it, she says. Shiloh's yours? Not yet, but he will be, and we don't have to take him over to Judd's. Before I can get the last word out, she's got her arms around me, squeezing the breath from my chest almost. I think Shiloh can smell Judd Travers on me. He can smell the deer's blood, too. I know by the way he sniffs my shoes. But finally, he just can't stand it no more. He's joyful I'm back, and he's licking me, welcoming me home. But Dad's still studying my face. I can't figure it, Marty. Judd seemed pretty definite about you keeping that dog. What was said between you? I really didn't want to lie no more. If I tell Ma and Dad everything except about the deer, that's lying by omission. Ma says not telling the whole truth. But if I tell about the deer after promising Judd I wouldn't, then I would have lied to Judd. Rather lie to Judd than my folks, but I figure it this way. Dad wouldn't report Judd even if he did see him shoot a doe out of season, because that's the way it's always been around here. That don't necessarily make it right, of course, but with him feeling that way, nothing's going to change if I do tell him about Judd and the deer. And because I promised not to, I don't. Right now, the most important thing to me is Shiloh. Told him I wasn't going to give Shiloh back no matter what, I tell Dad. They're sure staring at me now, him and Ma. You said that to Judd Travers? Dad asked, scooting back in his chair. Only thing left to say. Only thing I could think of that I hadn't already tried. Was going to tell him he could take me to court and I'd tell the judge how he kicked the dogs, but didn't have to go that far. Guess he just needs help around this place. Ma turns to Dad. You know, I think it's because Shiloh was hurt. I think he figures that dog's never going to be what it was, and that's why he was willing to let it go. Figured he got rid of a lame dog, and that's the best bargain, too. That's what I figure, I say, and at last Dad begins to smile. So we got ourselves a new member of the family, he tells me, and that's about the nicest thing I heard in this house in my life. Then Becky and Dara Lynn wake up, sad face, because they think we got to take Shiloh over to Judd's. I tell them the news, and Dara Lynn, she starts dancing. Becky joins in, whirling herself around, and then Shiloh, smiling his dog smile, everybody whooping and carrying on. Ma turns off the TV and makes waffles with a big part of margarine in the center and each one of hot homemade brown sugar syrup filling the plates. She even makes a waffle for Shiloh. We're going to make that dog sick if we're not careful. Now all we got to do is worry about how we can afford to feed him as well as ourselves, Dad says finally. But there's food for the body and food for the spirit, and Shiloh sure enough feeds our spirit. We about pet Shiloh to death. Every time he turns around, somebody's got a hand on him somewheres. I take him out for his first gentle run since he got hurt. Once up on the hill, him running free, the good feeling inside makes me grow bigger. The good feeling inside me grows bigger and bigger, and I have to let it out. I hunch my shoulders back and let go a yahoo! Shiloh jumps and looks at me. Yoo! I go again, out of joy and jubilation, the way they do in church. And suddenly Shiloh joins in with a bark. a pitiful kind of bark, like he's got to be taught how. But it's a happy bark, and he's learning. Only bit of sadness left in me is for the deer, wondering too about whose business it was when somebody breaks the law. Wonder if Dad wouldn't never tell on Judd no matter what he done. Bet he would. There's got to be times when one person does what one person does is everybody's business. Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock, I'm waiting on Judd's porch when he pulls up. All his dogs is chained out to the side of the house, and they get to barking like crazy. I don't get near them because a chain dog can be mean. I've already restacked Judd's woodpile, but he wants me to do it again, put the big pieces here, the little ones there. He's looking mean and grumpy, like maybe he's disgusted with himself for letting me have the dog so easy. When I finish the woodpile, Judd hands me the hoe. You see that garden? I nod. You see that corn? I want the dirt chopped up so fine that I can sift it through my fingers, he tells me. Now I see what he's getting at. He's going to make it so there's no way I can please him. I'll put in my 20 hours and he'll tell me my work wasn't no good and he wants his dog back. I hoe till I got blisters on both hands, sweat pouring down my back. Wish I could do my work early in the morning before the sun's so fierce, but I don't complain. I take off my t-shirt, finally wrap it around my head to keep the sweat out of my eyes, and I keep on. Shoulders so red I know they'll hurt worse than anything the next morning, and they do. Next afternoon, Judd sets me to scrubbing down the sides of his trailer and his porch, shining up the windows, raking the yard. He sits on a folding chair in the shade, drinking a cold beer. Don't offer me nothing, not even water. I hate him more than the devil. My mouth's so dry it feels like fur. Third day, though, he puts out a quart jar of water for me when I go to pick his beans. I bend over them rows so long, dropping the beans into a bucket, I think I'm going to be bent for life. When I'm through, Judd sort of motions me onto the porch like I can sit there if I want while I drink my water. I almost fall onto that porch, glad to be in the shade. Looks like you got yourself some blisters, he says. I'm okay, I tell him, and I'll take another long drink. How's Shiloh, he asks. For the first time, he called the dog by its name. He's doing fine. Still got a limp, but he eats good. Judd lifts his drink to his lips. Would have been a good hunting dog if I could have just kept him home, he says. The other dogs never run off. I think about that a while. Well, I say finally, each one is different. That's the truth. Kick one and he just goes under the porch for an hour. Kick another and he goes off and don't come back. I'm trying my best to think of what to say to that, like how he has to kick him at all. And then I figure nobody likes to be preached at, no matter how much he needs it, least of all Judd Travers, who's 30 years old if he's a day. Some dogs, it just makes them mean when you kick them, I say finally. Other dogs, it makes them scared. Shiloh got scared. Never beat my dogs with a stick, Judd goes on. Never did that in my life. I don't say anything right away. Finally, though, I ask, how you dogs doing? Raring to go rabbit hunting, Judd says. We look over his 3 dogs, all pulling at their chains and snarling at each other. That biggest dog now, Judd goes on, he's the loudest squaller I got. I can tell him from the racket whether he's following a fresh track or an old one. If he's running a ditch, swimming, or treat a coon. That's pretty good, I say. Littlest one, he's nothing but a trashy dog. He'll run down most anything except what I'm after. Hope the others will learn him something. And that middle dog, well, she gives a lot of mouth too. Even barks at dead trees. The dogs were fighting now, and Judd throws his can at him. Y'all shut up, he yells. Hush up. And then he hits the biggest dog, and they all scatter. Don't much like being chained, Judd says. I guess nobody would, I tell him. I put in 10 hours that week, meaning I made up 20 of the dollars I owe him. Got one more week to go. When I leave an afternoon for Judd, Shiloh goes with me just so far, then he gets to whining and turns back. I'm glad he won't go on with me. Don't want him anywhere near Judd Travers. Monday of the second week. Seems like Judd's out to break my back or my spirit or both. This time he's got me splitting wood. I got to roll a big old piece of locust wood over to the stump in his side yard, drive a wedge in it, then hit the wedge with a sledgehammer again and again till the wood falls apart in pieces to fit his wood stove. And then another log and another. I can hardly get the sledgehammer up over my head. And when I bring it down, my arms are so wobbly my aim ain't true. Almost dropped the hammer. This ain't a job for me. And if Dad saw what Judd was making me do, he'd tell him it wasn't safe. But Judd's out to teach me a lesson, and I'm out to teach him one, so I keep at it. Know it takes me twice as long as Judd to split that wood, but I don't stop. And all the while, Judd sits on his porch, drinking his beer, watching me sweat. Sure does a heart good, I can tell. Then he says something that almost stops my heart cold. He laughs and says, "Boy, you sure are putting in a whole lot of work for nothing." I rest my back a moment, wipe one arm across my face. "Shiloh's something," I tell him. "You think you're going to get my dog just 'cause you got some handwritten on a piece of paper?" Judd laughs and drinks some more. "Why, that paper's not good for anything but to blow your nose. Didn't have a witness." I look at Judd. "What you mean? You don't even know what's legal and what's not, do you? You show a judge that paper without a witness's signature, he'll laugh at you right out of the courthouse. Got to have somebody sign that like you that saw you strike the bargain." Judd laughs some more. "Ain't nobody up here but my dogs." I feel sick inside, like I could maybe throw up. Can't think of what to do or say, so I just lift the sledgehammer again and go on splitting the wood. Judd laughs even harder. "What are you, boy, some kind of fool?" And when I don't answer, he says, "What you breaking your back for?" "I want that dog," I tell him, and rages the sledgehammer again. That night when I'm sitting out on the porch with Ma and Dad, Shiloh in my lap, I check it out. "What's a witness?" I say. "Somebody who knows the Lord Jesus and don't mind telling about it," says Ma. "No, the other kind. Somebody who sees something happen and signs that it's true," Dad says. "What you got in mind now, Marty?" "You make a bargain with somebody, you got to have a witness," I ask, not answering. "If you want it done right and legal, I suppose you do." I can't bear to have Dad know I was so stupid I made an agreement with Judd Travers without a witness. "What you thinking on?" Dad asks again, hunching his shoulders up while Ma rubs his back. "Just thinking how you sell something is all, land and stuff." Dad looks at me quick. "You're not trying to sell off some of my land for that dog, are you?" "No," I tell him. "I'm glad I got him off track, but I sure am worried. Every trace of that deer's gone now. Don't know what Judd done with the meat. Rented him a meat locker somewhere, maybe. But there's no bones around and no hide. I report him now, and I can't prove a thing." Next day, Judd Travers calls me dumb, sees me waiting for him on the steps, and says I must have a head as thick as a coconut. Didn't he already tell me that the paper wasn't worth nothing? I just look him straight through. "You and me made a bargain," I say, "and I aim to keep my part of it. What you want me to do today?" Judd just points to the sledgehammer again and doubles over laughing, like it's the biggest joke he ever played on somebody in his life. I can feel the sweat trickle down my back, and I ain't even started yet. 4 o'clock comes, and I finally finished all that wood, but Judd pretends he's asleep. Got his head laid back, mouth half open, but I know it's just another way he's got to trick me. Wants me to sneak on home, and then I'll say I didn't keep my part of the bargain. So I go in the shed, put the sledgehammer back, take out the sickle, and go to tackle the weeds down by the mailbox. Work on them a whole hour, and when 5 o'clock comes, I start back toward the shed, see him watching me, and I'll walk over. "Sickle's getting dull, Jed. You got a whetstone around? I could sharpen it for you." He studies me a good long while. "In the shed," he says. I go get it, set it on a stump, running the whetstone over the blade. "Past 5 o'clock, says Judd. "I know," I say. "I ain't going to pay you 1 cent more," he says. "It's okay," I tell him. Never saw a look on a man's face like I see in his. Pure puzzlement is what it is. Thing I decide on when I head for Judd's again the next day is that I got no choice. All I can do is stick to my side of the deal and see what happens. All in the world I can do. If I quit now, he'll come for Shiloh, and we're right back where we started. I don't want to make you mad. No use having a winner and a loser, or the bad villains would just go on. Don't want to have to worry about Shiloh when he's running loose and I'm in school. Don't want to feel that Judd's so sore at me he'll think of any excuse to run his truck over my dog. Only sign in this world we're making progress is the water Judd puts out for me. This day it even has ice in it, and Judd don't say one word about a witness. In fact, when I'm through working and sit down on his porch to finish the water, Judd talks a little more than usual. Only bond we got between us is dogs, but at least that's something. I decide to say something nice to Judd, tell him how good looking his dogs are. Giving a compliment to Judd Travers is like filling a balloon with air. You can actually see his chest swell up. 40, 30, 45, he says when I tell about his dogs. Those are their names now? What I paid for him, he says. If they had a little more meat on their bones, I figure they'd be the best looking hounds in Tyler County, I tell him. Judd sits there, turning his drink around in his hands and saying, maybe could use a bit more fat. I nurse my water along a little too. When did you first get interested in hunting? I ask him. Your pa take you out when you were little? Judd spits. I didn't know one man could drink beer and chew tobacco at the same time, but Judd does. Once or twice, he says. Only nice thing about my dad I remember. It's the first time in my life I ever felt anything like sorry for Judd Travers. If you weighed it on a postal scale, it would hardly move the needle at all. But I suppose there was a fraction of an ounce of sorry for him somewhere inside me. When I thought on all the things I'd done with my own dad and how Judd could only remember hunting, well, that was pretty pitiful for a lifetime. Thursday, when I got there, Judd's meanness has got the best of him again because I can see he's running out of work for me to do, just giving me work to make me sweat. Dig a ditch to dump his garbage in, he says. Hoe that cornfield again. Scrub that porch. Weed that bean patch. But close on to 5 o'clock, he seems to realize that I'm only going to be there one more time. I'd worked real hard that day. Did anything he asked and done it better than he asked me to do it. Well, one more day, Judd says when I sit down at last with my water and him with his beer. What are you going to do once that dog? What are you going to do with that dog once he's yours? Just play, I tell him. I'm going to love him. We sit there side by side with the clouds change places, puff out, and the wind blowing them this way and that. I'm wondering how things would have turned out if it hadn't been for that deer. If I'd just knocked on Judd's front door 2 weeks ago and told him I wasn't giving Shiloh up, what would have happened then? To tell the truth, I think Ma's right. Judd would have sold him to me by and by because of Shiloh's limp. Judd's the kind that don't like that in a dog, same as he don't want a deer or a dent or scratch of any kind on his pickup truck. Makes him look bad, he thinks. His truck's got to be perfect to make up for all the ways Judd's not. The last day I work for Judd, he inspects every job I do, finds fault with the least little thing, keeps pestering me, making me hang around, do my work over. When it's time to go, I say, well, I guess that's it then. Judd don't answer, just stands in the doorway of his trailer looking at me. And then I get the feeling he's going to tell me I can take that paper he signed and use it for kindling. Tell me I can call the game warden if I want. There's not a trace of that deer left. The 2 weeks of work I put in for him was just long enough for rain to wash away the blood, for the field grass to spring back up again where the deer was shot. But he still don't say anything, though, so I start off for home, chest tight. Just a minute, Judd says. I stop. He goes back inside the trailer, me waiting there in the yard. What am I going to say? What am I going to say? He tries that. What am I going to do? And then Judd's back in the doorway again, and he's got something in his hand. Comes down the steps halfway. Here, he says. And it's a dog's collar, an old collar, but better than the one Shiloh's got now. Might be a little big, but he'll grow into it. I look at Judd and take the collar. I don't know how we done it, but somehow we learned to get along. Thanks a lot, I tell him. You got yourself a dog, he says, and goes inside again and don't even look back. I get home that evening and Ma's baked a chocolate layer cake to celebrate. A real cake, too, not a Betty Crocker cake. After dinner, Ma and Dad on the porch, and the four of us rolls around on the grass together, Darrell Lynn, Becky, Shiloh, and me. Becky tries to give Shiloh her butterfly kisses, but he don't hold still long enough to feel her eyelashes bat against him. He just got a lick everywhere on her face. Long after Becky and Darrell Lynn goes inside, I lay out there on my back in the grass, not caring about the dew, Shiloh against me crosswise, his paws on my chest. I look at the dark closing in, sky getting more and more purple, and I'm thinking how nothing is as simple as you guess. Not right or wrong, not Judd Travers, not even me or this dog I got here. But the good part is, I saved Shiloh and opened my eyes some. And that ain't bad for 11. That's it. That's how the book ends. He finishes his work for Judd and actually gets to keep Shiloh. What a great book. What a great story about a boy who loves a dog. And I bet you love your pet too, whatever kind of pet you may have. I love my cat Shasta. She gets on my nerves sometimes, but I love her and we like to feed her and pet her. It always is nice to have a pet that you can love on like Marty loved on Shiloh. Well, I hope you enjoyed the story. Thanks for listening. Go take an AR test on it. It's worth quite a few points. See you later.